Our parents, the boomers, grew up believing hard work, sacrifice, and keeping a stiff upper lip were the only ways forward.
Then came millennials with their curated Instagram lives, their side hustles, and that sense of purpose.
Now we are working with and raising Gen Z, who need a safe space if their TikTok crashes.
And here we are, Gen X. We survived without Wi Fi but conquered technology. We survived adolescence without therapy hashtags. And we've done it all with grit, with humor, and a lot of sarcasm.
We are not afraid to call it out, have tough conversations, and laughed out.
We're not clinging to the past, but we're not falling apart about the future either. We are the generation that everyone seems to have forgotten. And you know what? We're okay with that.
Because we know how to make ourselves heard when need be. And that's what Totally Xed is all about.
Truth, contradictions, and the dark comedy of being Gen X.
Hello, Rashna.
Hello, Naheed. How are you?
Am I right?
Well, we are the generation that's totally, totally effed, really, in
Well,
so many ways. But
yeah.
we don't really care about that, do we?
Yeah, we don't, but we are sandwiched. We're sandwiched between baby boomers and the millennials and the Gen
Zoomers.
Zs.
Yeah, we are. But I came across this really cool meme, and it's been trending. A lot of those memes that how people our age looked a lot older 2 generations ago or 1 generation ago, like our
Yeah.
parents'
Yeah,
generation.
yeah.
At this age looked a lot older, and I do get a kick out of being told that we look younger than our age.
Yeah, but I don't like being told you look good for your age. I mean, what does that even mean?
Yes,
I
that
look
is
good.
correct.
Full stop. What's age got to do with it,
Yeah, and then my wrinkles or my gray hair, that's like those are battle scars. I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah, you can keep your gray hair. I don't mind.
Well, I decided the dye had to die because I went prematurely gray, and I've been dyeing my hair for the last 20 years.
Wow. All right.
Yes. I mean, look at this. So finally I decided to let go of it because I was losing hair. It wasn't
it's
very
not
good. And
good.
quite frankly, I don't have the best shaped head. So the bald look will not look good on me at all. So it was that or going gray.
Yeah, I remember, one of my co-workers during COVID, she shaved her head. And when I met her post-COVID, she had this beautiful head of silvery hair. It was beautiful. And I was so tempted to. I'm like, that's not a bad idea.
Oh.
But I haven't dyed my hair that long. So, I'm going to keep at it for another decade or so. Let's see.
Let's go for it. Go for it. I mean, listen, my mom is in her late 70s and she still dyes her hair.
Ooh.
And she hates, being seen with white hair. So she thinks I've gone absolutely mad. But I think our parents, moms were different.
Yeah, their lives were different. I think their lives were different. They were very prescribed roles for them. And I think, it all boils down to economic independence. A lot of them didn't have that. So, specifically, I'm talking about Gen X women. And we've got that, but yet we've also got the hang-ups of the boomers. So we are sort of, I don't know where we are. We are stuck in the middle, really.
We are stuck in the middle. And, when it comes to health and beauty, so my mom, she dyes her hair, but most women of her generation, she's got massive health problems because they did not look after themselves.
Of course. I mean, that's so true. And, the dreaded word menopause, which I think both of us are going through, they just lived through it and it left its scars.
Absolutely.
Do you remember, 20 years ago, there was this, maybe even more, there was this hoo-ha about HRT causing cancer, and that was all so wrong,
Yes.
It was incorrect information given to our mom's generations.
Yeah.
And they suffered because the lack of all those hormones causes blood pressure and weak bones.
Osteoporosis.
Every
heart issues.
illness, honestly.
Yeah.
And God just shuts off those hormones. And, what do? So we go running and get HRT.
Absolutely. That's where science comes in. And that's the beauty of it. There is always an answer. And yeah, and it's a shame because my mom, the other day, she said something interesting and she said, and it was so reflective of not just her generation, but also I think our society as South Asian women. And she said, I really should have been selfish and looked after my health. And I said, no, that's not being selfish. That's being sensible.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, if you don't look after yourself, how do you look after others? That's my question. And at 60, if you're going to be old and you lose muscle and you're not able to, you lose mobility. Firstly, you lose mobility. It's happening with our parents. And it could have been avoided.
It could have been avoided. And
Right?
that's, and I really feel for our parents because they came from a time where it was like, you work really hard and you sacrifice your health and your time and everything else to just give it all for your children, and
That's
which is
right.
amazing. They did, but they didn't have to sacrifice their
Yeah,
health.
and looking after yourself is not selfishness. I mean, just that little correction that had to be made and it
Yeah.
wasn't made, and it thankfully has been made in our generation. But in the millennials and Gen Zs, it's something different altogether. It's all about self-care.
Yeah,
I mean, I look at their, at the accounts, and oh my God, the self-care, the level of self-care that they have.
yeah,
Yeah, it's something else. I don't think we are
yeah.
there.
No, like Zoomers, which, by the way, I think they're going to hate us calling them Zoomers, but it kind of fits because, we're stuck between boomers and Zoomers.
Yeah.
But even with millennials, I think that's something that we learned from them.
Yeah.
And we are the generation that has actually taken the best of every generation around us. They looked after themselves. They created, the concept of giving yourself space and giving yourself time. And I think Gen Z is just taking it to the next level, though.
Yeah.
With I've met girls in their 20s, looking up Botox. That's crazy.
No, that's crazy. I've got a 13-year-old niece, and she's a regular at Sephora, and I just don't get it. I mean, what do you buy? I asked her, what do you buy? And skincare and hair care.
Yeah.
She's beautiful as it is. She's not even a grown-up person. So why are you doing that? So that's other, I don't really envy parents with teenagers in this day and age, because it's so.
not
I
easy.
imagine it's going to be so difficult to be a parent
Yeah.
of a 13-year-old
13-year-old,
girl
yeah.
or boy. You see a show like Adolescence and you just feel, my God.
Oh my God, that was like,
Yeah,
adolescence was, it shook me to my core.
Exactly.
And I think it's one of those few moments where I think, it's, I don't have children. So it was one of those times when I thought, oh my God, maybe it's just as well. How do you bring up children in this
That's
time
right.
and age?
That's right. And so in some ways, we've seen the best and worst of all of it, really.
Yeah.
We're the ones who used radio. I remember, making cassette tapes out of radio shows. I'm sure you have done that.
Absolutely,
And
going
buying Top of the Pops
and
on
like
VHS.
getting mixtapes made.
Exactly.
And,
That was a sign of love, right?
absolutely. But here's the thing, like we've managed to make that transition fairly seamlessly.
Yeah.
So where we used to make mixtapes, now we have, we have a
Make
little
Spotify lists.
playlists on our
Yep.
phone, and we've kind of like done it all.
Yeah, we made the transition,
Yeah.
and we've learned technology. We may not be as great as the Zoomers or the millennials, but we're coping. We've coped well,
I think we've done really well. And also on that point, most of the technology that we use was not developed by millennials and Gen Z. It was actually developed by our generation.
Yeah, it was work in progress.
We with the people who did it, all these companies, that's who they
That's
are.
true.
And,
That's true.
so I think we deserve a pat on the back for that. But
Are you nostalgic about anything at all, from our young days?
I mean, yeah, life was simpler. I talk about it like with friends and all. Life was simpler then, obviously, for many reasons. I think we grew up in an incredible time for pop culture. The 80s and 90s were booming. There was so much experimentation happening, whether that was film or music. And in terms of pop culture, it was a really great time to grow up. But I look back at the past fondly, but I don't hang on to it.
Yeah, that's key. I mean,
I think that's
key to
what
growth,
we're
really,
about,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Life was simpler. The overdose of information, we're just drowning in information.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we got our information in those days, but there was no internet. I mean, a large chunk of our lives, we lived without internet.
Yeah. We had to
And-
seek it out.
Yeah, we had to seek out information, and yet we were quite well informed. I remember spending hours at the British Council Library and just going through the reference library, finding information, you
Yeah.
know, anything that I wanted
looking
to
up
learn.
things. And
I think that kind of effort makes information stick into your head.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We remember things. And also, the one thing that I think that helped make us a very curious generation, we were very curious because of
Yeah.
so many changes
still
happening
are.
around us. We still are. It's like, oh, so how does that happen? Oh,
Yeah.
what's this
Asking
all about?
questions all the time.
Asking questions all the time. And I do miss that. I think we're losing, as human beings, we might be
Yeah.
losing our sense of curiosity and wonderment.
Because all questions are answered by, Google and now AI.
It's easily done.
So
yeah.
people don't want to talk to people,
Yeah.
You talk to millennials on Gen Zs and they don't want to take phone calls. My own children, they're like, why don't you just message? I'm like, why can't you talk? And
Yeah.
they just shop online and everything is online. They live their lives online.
Yeah.
And they loved the COVID time because they didn't need to go out to work. So. But I don't know. I mean, if you don't talk to other people, what's life about then?
Exactly. And I think, but with COVID, it was a very odd time because, again, with my mom, because she was immunocompromised, she isolated herself, but she's still isolated. She became so used to it.
Mm.
With a lot of young people, a lot of people in their 20s and all who were still in college or school, it was a terrible time because, at that age, hanging out with friends forms such a huge part of your life, and you're not able to do that. It kind of unsettles you.
Yeah, it makes you lose your human skills, I
Yeah.
would say.
And I think that did happen with them, with a lot of
Especially,
them.
kids who started university that year or kids who graduated
Yeah.
that year and were looking for work and they had to start work online. I mean, it was a very unfair time, I feel,
It was,
for
yeah.
them. But
So when it comes to shopping, I've been shopping online since COVID for
I know.
so many things.
Yeah.
I avoid malls now
Yeah.
because they're just
No, so
crowded
I
and
have-
annoying.
I have to, it's, my kids always said, why do you want to go to a grocery store? And I always did. But during COVID, I started, grocery and fruits and veggies and everything. And
Yeah.
now it's just that. There's always, a delivery box outside my door. So there you go. It's convenient.
It's convenient, and you skip the traffic and
Yeah.
the crowds and
so
all
we're
of
sort
that.
of pulled in all directions,
That's true. That is true. The one thing I wanted to talk about was, during COVID,
Yeah.
there was we spent a lot of times on our phone,
Yeah.
not just shopping and looking for stuff, but we ended up scrolling, doom scrolling. And there was a
Of
lot of doom
course,
scrolling
yeah,
happening on
yeah,
Instagram, and I think that's when there was this need to explore wellness posts,
Yeah.
and we took to them. And then the problem with algorithms is that, of course, you look at one, you look at the second, you like the second one, you share a
keep
third,
showing you
and
that.
it will keep throwing it at you. And I think at that point, there was a lot of conversation about mental health, which is great.
Yeah.
But I do feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, that it's now becoming a little bit of a crutch as well. So it's possible that, and it is an issue, no doubt about it. And I'm
Yeah.
glad we're talking about it. It's necessary. But when somebody, especially a young, impressionable person, keeps seeing this all the time, it does affect how they perceive themselves.
Yeah. It's
What
like
do you
anything
think?
else,
Is that-
you can take it too far. I think it's been taken a little bit too far. And not just mental health, even physical health as well, We grew up eating all kinds of whatever.
Yeah.
Nobody was gluten intolerant. Nobody was dairy intolerant. Nobody, we just ate and drank whatever was given to us. And now every other person I meet is either vegan and gluten intolerant or can't eat dairy or whatever,
It's,
I'm like, yeah, well, is it really that number of people? That's quite a large majority. Why and how did it happen?
Yeah, I think there's this need to find something wrong, and that might explain why we are the way we are. And it's like, but hey, when it comes to food, I eat everything.
Yeah.
I still eat everything.
Yeah.
My brother was teasing me the other day, and he said, there are in this city, like you of a lot of Barbies. You're carby,
Yeah.
so because I love my
Oh,
carbs.
that's another thing,
And I'm like, yes.
you reach a certain age, which we are at, and you're told to lay off the carbs. And I'm sorry, I
No
can't.
way.
That's one of the pleasures of life. And
Yeah,
so,
I'm going to own my carby status, and I've
Yeah.
decided, yes, that is it.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
carby.
So I think part of being the generation that we are, we don't really care much about
not
a
really.
lot.
Yeah. I mean,
I
yeah,
think
we,
that's a good
we do
trait.
look after our health, but we also know how to enjoy life.
Yeah. And following trends, honestly, it's not for me. And I think you're the same, why should we follow trends?
And I was telling my niece, my cousin's daughter, a few months back, because there's also, when you go online and, this, be positive, and do this and you'll be positive, and do this. And, like, you can't be happy all the time. There will be moments when it'll be a crappy situation, and you can get angry, and you can vent, and you can feel sad, and it's perfectly
And that's
fine.
life.
It's
That is
life.
life. You can't, there's no constant state of happiness, and there's no constant state of sadness.
Exactly. And there's this whole thing of, toxic positivity that's also now becoming a
What is that?
conversation. Toxic positivity is like the need to feel positive all the time.
Wow.
And
All
when
right.
you're being told that you need to be positive all the time, or if you're not in this positive frame of mind and not manifesting a better life for yourself, there's something wrong. And
Wow. All right. I did not know. You live and you learn. I did not know about this one.
There is something called toxic positivity now.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Not telling myself that I have to be happy all the time.
You don't have to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
You can be miserable
It's
every now
actually
and
not
then.
possible to be happy all the time, is it?
It isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a hankering for going back to the 80s and 90s. That's somehow very popular with the millennials and even the Gen Zs.
Yes.
They love the music as well.
Yes.
Which I don't blame them for it, because the music was great. I mean,
It was great. But I find that really interesting that they're really into this stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought it would be the case, but it's there. Maybe it's nostalgia. I was even told by this young student, they said, oh, things were better in your time. And they were really, had this, sort of glossed over look on their face. And then I was the one, can you imagine telling them that I said, listen, there were, even at that time, there was all sorts of crap happening. It wasn't a perfect time.
No, it wasn't the perfect time. And we also being very selective about, the things that were
remembering
good.
How,
but imagine, the kind of access that these kids now have to dating, for example. Dating in our time, it was tough.
It was.
How do you meet someone in our culture, especially, it just wasn't a thing.
No.
So, and now in any culture at all, everybody has access to dating on their phones. So it has both a good size and bad size. But, it gives you a certain level of freedom, which we didn't have.
Of course. And there's also, it's access, it's acceptability. It's, I think there's a greater freedom to make choices, But I do feel that when it comes to being a woman, even in today's world, it's just never easy. So if you are not married, it's like, why aren't you married? If you are married, then why don't you have children?
Yeah.
There's a constant, it's still there.
That's for every woman of every generation, I think.
Yeah.
And that's why you see a lot of Gen Zs and younger millennials not wanting to get married. A lot of girls are.
Yeah.
What's happened, I think, and this is irrelevant to. I think it's relevant to being a Gen X parent, but I see it with my kids and their generation that girls have really evolved.
Yeah.
This level of freedom has meant that girls have really evolved, and guys haven't, sadly. And a lot of girls are deciding to stay single, which may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing. We don't know. I mean, we can't look into the future.
Yeah.
But, there may be communities of single women 25 years on, and that's not a bad thing, So.
Yeah. But also, I think they will make marriage choices based on not because oh, I need to do this because there's a lot of pressure on me, but because they actually want to be with that person.
Yeah.
I do sometimes feel, though, I think we are, we can be very tough on young men, and because it's always a case of what they're not doing right, but it's not. I'm sure there are a lot of young men out there who are amazing. I see that especially in this generation, the younger generation.
Yeah. No, I think what changes, again, it boils down to something very basic: economic independence, financial independence. The big difference that I see between boomers, Gen Xers, and then millennials and Gen Z, what happened, especially with women. Boomers were not given that choice of being economically independent financially. Very few of our mom's generations, women, who worked and who had a source of income all their own. And financial independence gives you the freedom, really, to choose your relationship or to walk out of a bad relationship. And they did not have that. With us, we were educated, we were given some choices, but we were also told that there is a template to follow, which is get married and have babies and be good wives and be good moms. And you can work, yeah, sure, but that is a secondary thing. And sort of that's what a lot of us did. But then, we did work, and that level of independence really made our lives different. But with the younger ones, millennials and Gen Z, they become economically independent in their 20s. And that just changes the perspective of why do we follow a template?
Yeah, but I do realize now that I never followed that template.
Yeah, but there are very few of you.
Yeah, there are very few of me.
There were very few women, again, in the South Asian culture where you are sort of not allowed is not the right word, but just circumstances happen that you can live life of your own choice,
Yeah, and that's so true, because as it was much later that I realized that I was not the norm, I was the outlier. And there's a certain freedom in that as well, that, okay, what?
There is.
Take the path less
as you get older, you realize, you can be happy on your own. I've been married forever, but I can also be happy on my own, I think, again, I think menopause does that. It shuts off the caring hormones. And I don't
My
care.
cousin told me that, when I turned 40, and I was like, this is great. There's a certain, you kind of start letting go of things when you turn 40.
Yeah.
And she said, wait till you turn 50, then you really stop giving a damn. And it's true.
I can see the sense in why God created menopause for women, You're done mothering, you're done with it. Because mothering takes so much out of you.
Yeah.
And then, you reach this age and you're like, all right, I'm going to live for myself now.
But, we are the generation that not only started working and basically set it up for the generations to come, but also when it comes to menopause or menstruation for that matter, we started talking about it, and we started asking questions, and we started demanding answers. Our mothers, when it was a taboo topic, you never talked about it.
And again, it's because we went out to work, We wanted that maternity leave.
Yeah.
We wanted to, be home for the first few months for our children. So I think we fought for it and we got it. And now this generation, they're fighting for menstruation leave and they're getting it. And now we are fighting for menopause leave and, all the facilities that women should have around that age. And we are fighting for it. And there's
So the one thing I realized was I would speak to my mom and my aunts. So how did you get through this? Before, so kind of like preparing myself for the inevitable, and they said, oh, it was fine, we never even felt it. I'm like, really? Seriously?
I asked my mom that, and she said,
That's
I
not
took
possible.
a lot of naps. I'm like, all right, but that's a different life where you can take naps, where your body is used to taking naps. My body isn't used to taking naps. I can't crawl into my bed in the middle of the day. Our lives are different, So yeah, it's coping mechanisms, but I think let science make your life easier. Science is there. Just read, get as much information as possible, but just let science take over.
Yeah. So if you were to, if I was to ask you, what have you learned from the other generations boomers, millennials, and Gen Z, what would it be?
Well, boomers, I think that whole loyalty aspect of it, where you've got to be loyal to your family, you've got to be respectful to your elders. And I think that's I don't see it much in the younger generation. With the millennials, who my kids are, I think just I learned so much from them, from using a hairdryer, which I didn't know, or using a mascara from my daughter, to just using internet properly from my son, or downloading music. Oh my God, I remember Napster. Do you remember Napster?
Yes. Oh wow, that's a blast from the past.
I learned from my son how to download music. This was like late 90s, mid 90s, something.
Probably,
and it took like 24 hours to download one song. So I
on
learned
dial-up.
on dial-up.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I don't miss dial-up. I have to say, when it comes to nostalgia, I have
that
no
sound.
nostalgia for dial-up.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with Wi-Fi.
Please hang up. I'm downloading something. So I learned a lot of technology from my son. I learned a lot of lifestyle business from my daughter. And the Gen Z, my nieces and nephew at that age. And I'm learning, not to give a shit about stuff from them. They don't.
So for me, I think for boomers, I would probably think the work ethic and the fact that, the never give up attitude.
Yeah.
You just never give up.
Yeah.
They might have taken it too far sometimes.
Yeah.
But there is some merit to that.
Yeah.
From millennials, I think millennials do have a sense of wonderment about them, and the value of having a side hustle. That was
true.
that while you're working, you should have a side hustle. So that's what you can transit to when you switch jobs or whatever. And I think that is a great thing to do. I think that's amazing. I think we should all have had side hustles a long time ago.
Yeah.
From Gen Z, I would probably think their ability to create boundaries and say, okay, hang on, enough is enough. So I know a lot of Gen Zs who do actually work very, very hard. I think it's also creating boundaries is important, and being able to say no, which we are not very good at.
That's what I'm saying. So Gen Z, they just do it automatically.
They do it, yeah.
There are no hang-ups about it.
They might be taking it too far at times. But
you only live once. I keep thinking, Rashna, you only live once. And we wasted a lot of our good 20s and 30s caring about other people and what the world would say. And, and that's wasted time. That's wasted life, really.
It is absolutely 100%. 100%.
As far as side hustle, you mentioned side hustle. I think technology has really made that possible.
Oh,
a lot of it wasn't possible, in our time.
Yes,
flexi hours, side hustle, those things weren't possible, when we started work in our 20s. And I think, the world's really oyster now. You just need to have good ideas.
And technology has probably been one of the greatest equalizers in the world. The ability to just pick up a phone and call somebody at the other end of the world and have a conversation with them at any given time, to stay connected. It's, it was
and with families, all over the place. So I look at my parents, the boomers, and 3 of us are not in the same country or city with them. And the fact that they can talk to us, again, 25, 30 years ago, there used to be long distance calls, and now you don't want to do that. You don't have to do that. So I think, yes, technology has transformed lives in good ways, but it can be a bad way as well if you overdo it.
Exactly. It's, there are all these memes floating around about, the Terminator.
Yeah.
And various other things. It's like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But then again, you have, I remember my grandmother told me the story that her grandmother had told, her mother would tell her. And this is we're talking about probably like 80 years ago, 100 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And her great-grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother was sitting there one day and saying, oh my God, it's like, the times are so bad. The times are so bad. And because something was probably, there was probably a world war happening, most likely. And her mother turned around and said, you know what? All my life I've heard the times are bad, the times are good. Nobody ever says, oh, these are good times we live in.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever said that.
So you need
We
to
only-
appreciate the times that you're living in.
We only think about good times in retrospect.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, just like, these millennials are saying, oh, 80s and 90s were great. We lived through the 80s and 90s, and they were
there was a
great
Cold
in some
War.
ways, but they were
There
not
was-
great in other ways.
exactly.
And I think, 20 years
Yeah.
on, we'll think about this time and we'll say, okay, those times were great. So I think, human beings get selective memory as they...
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a blessing, I would say. You remember the good
Maybe it
things, you
is.
don't remember the bad things. It's
is
fine,
true.
it's okay.
That is true.
Yeah.
So at some point, you think in 20 years' time, we will look back and say, those were the good old
Those were-
days.
Yeah, because you don't know what's happening in the next 20 years. The way things
Yeah.
are going, you don't know what's happening in the next 20 years.
Absolutely. And like we might just turn around and say that, say the same thing. I mean, right now it doesn't, it's.
Yeah, we're
everything's
saying
in a
these are bad
flux and-
times. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
saying that the world's a mess and the world's on fire, and
Yeah.
all of that is true. But at the same time, who knows? It may be worse in 20 years' time.
Exactly.
So we don't know.
Absolutely.
So here's where we've landed. Grey hair isn't defeat, it's a power move. Health is our new wealth, and we still think we are 30 years old.
So we are softer than boomers, tougher than Gen Z, and able to communicate with millennials who we suddenly get along with.
Thank you for hanging out with us on Totally Xed. Next time, we talk generational sensibilities in the workplace.
So stock up on that Xanax, and just remember, Gen X doesn't just age, we upgrade.